Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Roguy Media. My name is Alex Schlerf, and today we're going to be going into a bit of Marvel news. Typically, Fridays I would have a movie review either written or recorded on here. And it's not for a lack of movies that are out that I'm not doing this. Obviously, there's Elio and 28 Years Later that both dropped today when I'm recording this. I still haven't seen the live action How to Train Your Dragon. I'd love to review those for the site, but for different reasons, I'm not able to today because. In the case of How to Train Your Dragon and Elio, my local theater is a bit of a smaller theater, my local AMC, and I am an AMC subs member, so I don't really want to go anywhere but AMC. And they just don't have any great times for me today to see it. And yesterday I was working, so I literally just didn't have time to see it. The only times they had for both Elio and How to Train Your Dragon that worked for me were 3D times, and I just don't have any interest in seeing the movies in 3D, either of those movies in 3D or in general, honestly. So I kind of put those in the back burner. I think I'm going to see them tomorrow, and I don't think I'm going to review How to Train Your Dragon because I just have no connection to that franchise. I don't even know if I'm going to see it. But Elio, I'll try to see Saturday or Sunday and have a either written or recorded review up by the end of the weekend. That's my goal. And then with 28 Years Later, I'm waiting to see it till Monday with a friend. So definitely one that I'm going to want to review because I've heard great things about it, and I've heard it's really divisive, so it'll be a great thing to talk about. But I am not going to be able to do that review until Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So I don't know if that'll be typed or recorded. Depends on if I have a lot to talk about and how good it is. But anyway, that's the reason you're not hearing a movie review and it's more of just a basic episode because that's the reasoning. So it's not just for no reason. But anyway, this week, I think this was on it was either Thursday or Wednesday, we learned that Marvel added a new 2028 film date to their calendar, an untitled Marvel Studios date for December 15th. 2028. And obviously, like that's way in the future, and a lot of things could change between now and then. And that's literally post Secret Wars. So like that's a whole new phase of the MCU, and it's going to be kind of challenging to predict what that even means or if the date will even stay. But here I'll say I'm assuming the date will stay and they will have that date along with three other dates in 2028. And what I'm going to be doing in this episode today is trying to predict what those films will be, and specifically the newest date, December 15th. Um, yeah, so I'm just going to just try to think and brainstorm with the possible projects that we know are in development, or some that have been rumored, or some that have just kind of long shots. And I have a list of like, I don't know, like 10 to 12 films here that I think are possibilities, and I've bolded out the ones that I think are my kind of predictions, and I'll kind of just go through everything first, talk about each one of them, and then give kind of what my four predictions are for these films. And like I said, the chances are that one or two of these dates is removed because Marvel has talked about the recent output putting less content out and focusing more on quality over quantity. So the chances that they release four films in 1 year, like not counting like a Spider-Man film, is very unlikely and probably won't happen. But I do think three of these dates at least will stay. And if they did four, I wouldn't be totally surprised. So that's why I'm kind of acting like there is a chance that there will be four. And I'll kind of rank them in terms of most likely, but we're just operating the assumption here that there will be four dates. But obviously, there's a chance that there won't be, and it'll be more like three movies and two shows, one live action, maybe one animated, stuff like that. But anyway, let's get into it. So, the first category of stuff that I have on here is sequels, and these are both sequels that we have heard are in development. And there was actually a lot of things that were confirmed in terms of sequels that were in development from the article that posted about this new date. So I can get into that real quick. Those are the ones I'll start with, but also sequels that are either basically confirmed to be in development or rumored to be in development. And I'm not like taking into account stuff that this isn't as relevant for this part of the episode, but for some films, like for example, like a Scarlet Witch film, I'm not including on here because like there isn't really any substance on that in terms of a rumor besides from just fans wanting it and just it making sense because it's a popular character. So I'm not including that in this list. Like there's a possibility that one of these films could be a Wanda focused film. Like there's a chance of that, but there was no substantial rumor about that from anyone that we trust. So I just can't put it in good faith on this list. But I mean, we'll see, but I'm not going to talk about it in this episode. So I'm kind of talking about films that have either been specifically confirmed by Marvel themselves or an outlet like Deadline, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, stuff like that, or something that's been heavily rumored by the scoopers that are trusted, which is Alex Perez at Cosmic Circus, Daniel RPK, Nexus Point News, a couple different sites that you usually trust me on this, that these are reliable sites. I wouldn't ever push fake rumors. So yeah. My first category is sequels that are either in development or basically confirmed or have been in development at one point. Um, One of the movies that the article, I'm trying to remember if it was Variety or Deadline, who posted this article with the untitled date. Let me just get that up. Variety. I think it was Variety. Marvel Untitled. Let's just see. Yeah, it was Variety. So Variety was the site that actually confirmed this. They were adding a new date to the calendar. And by the way, just for FYI purposes, it is February 18th, May 5th, November 10th, and December 15th for those dates in 2028. And yeah, they were the ones to first confirm that this December 15th date was being added. And they had a list of three movies that they theorized could potentially be fitting into these dates or this December 15th date specifically. And the first one they listed was Black Panther 3. Um, Obviously, this has already been confirmed to not only be in development, but be close to being worked on because the first two Panther movies were incredibly well received, both critically and commercially. It's a great franchise. It was always going to be another film in the franchise after the second one. Obviously, Shuri is having her story continue in both Avengers movies, and we'll kind of see where that takes us. We'll see if they're going the route of aging up to T'Challa's son to become the Black Panther, or maybe recasting T'Challa. I think that's less likely. But there's been rumors about that, obviously, and this would be a natural film to be coming out that year. And obviously, Ryan Coogler, we can trust him with our lives at this point with what he's done with all his films and recently Sinners. So yeah, I think it makes sense. This is one of the ones they listed. I think Black Panther 3 would be a good film to kick off the next saga of the MCU. I don't really think it makes sense to be within the next 3 years. Like, there's a chance that we don't get another film between Doomsday and Secret Wars besides some Spider-Man. Or now it's not even between it. There's a chance we don't get any films between Doomsday and Secret Wars. I think that's probably likely at this point. But if we were going to, this film doesn't really make sense in terms of like a battle world project or something that would be set in this huge multiverse of conflict. Like the wrap up of this Black Panther trilogy, I just don't see it taking place in the multiverse saga. So naturally, if it is one of the films that is in development, it makes sense that it could be one of the first films post Secret Wars. So I do think this is a very likely option. And again, Variety mentioned it as a sequel that is actively in development. So it is one of those very likely options. The next one that they mentioned was yes, it was Black Panther 2. And one of the other films they mentioned for in terms of sequels was a Fantastic Four sequel. And that is news to us because although it was very likely, obviously, that we would get a sequel to Fantastic Four just because of how large they're setting up these characters to be, it was not confirmed that a sequel was in development, and now Variety has confirmed that there is a sequel actively in development even before the production of the previous film or the first film has finished. And obviously, the film isn't out yet, but they are clearly banking on these characters and banking on them to make enough money for the first film and to potentially come back for a sequel. I actually have my Invisible Woman shirt on today, so you can see that. Obviously, this is very exciting news that they're doing a sequel to Fantastic Four. And I guess we'll just have to see what happens in the first film and what happens in the Avengers films to set up for a sequel. Um, Not to go super Fantastic Four comic nerd on here, I won't go into it too much, but I'd love to see Annihilus be the villain of a sequel, and kind of set up that cosmic side of things with Captain Marvel and with Nova and maybe the Shi'ar Empire, stuff like that. So again, not to go all into that, but that's kind of what I'd want out of a sequel. And I'd love to see Matt Shakman come back for a sequel as well. I don't know if he will, because I think they kind of chose him for this solo film because of the 60s aesthetic that they're doing, and assuming that's kind of going away with them potentially entering the mainline MCU after Secret Wars. That's kind of how it goes in the comics. I'm assuming most of that 60s aesthetic will be gone, and that's kind of what we've heard. So maybe Matt Shakman isn't the guy to potentially helm a sequel, although I'd still love to see it. Again, we have to see the film first. Like the film could be terrible, could be really good. Who knows? If it's really good and is received really well by critics and fans and does really well at the box office, there's a chance they bring back that whole creative team, specifically Matt Shakman, of course, and obviously the whole cast. So yeah, that's exciting. Fantastic Four sequel is in development, and that was one of the other ones Variety mentioned. The other film that Variety mentioned as a potential chance for 2028 is Blade, and I'm gonna get into that a little bit later, because I have another category specifically for films that are in development but kind of are in development limbo. We don't really know what's going on with them, so I'm gonna skip that for right now and go on to the rest of the sequels that we've heard about. So the first one that I said is Shang-Chi 2, which is not officially confirmed by anybody, I don't think, besides from the fact that Destin Daniel Cretton has said they are in development in a sequel, and same with Simu Liu. Daniel Cretton's the director. Simu Liu is obviously Shang-Chi himself. They have both said that they have a script and they're working on a sequel. Shang-Chi came out like 4 years ago now, so it does feel like it is time to start hearing more about the sequel and all that. But obviously, Destin Daniel Cretton is working on Spider-Man 4 right now, so and that hasn't even started filming yet. So this is not something that will be coming in the multiverse saga. We know that for sure. So it does make sense that this could be one of the first projects post-sequel wars, similar to the way Black Panther. Once Daniel Cretton is free, and once Simu Liu is not doing his Avengers filming, because we know he's also coming in the next two Avengers films, this is a natural sequel that will come at some point, I do believe, but I don't know if it'll be one of these 2028 dates, but it's certainly a possibility. And like I said, we know that it's in development. It'll be interesting to see where the story will go, depending on what or how things go in these next two Avengers movies. That's a common factor in a lot of these things is how will the characters be treated and developed, and how will their arcs continue in these next two films. I'm not thinking any of them will like die or anything, but at least from the characters I listed on here, but will how will their arcs develop, and how will it set up for a sequel, as soon as 2028 or maybe as late as like 2030. So we just don't know. But Shang-Chi 2 is definitely a possibility as a sequel that's in development. Doctor Strange 3 is another one I listed on here. Another film that is not officially confirmed by anybody. I think that there's been a lot of rumors over the years, and if this could be one of the movies leading up to Doomsday, it could be one of the movies leading up to Secret Wars. A lot of people think they are going to adapt the Time Runs Out storyline, comic storyline for this film, for this third film. And I think that's a possibility, but we got to start hearing about it soon. Like, if we don't hear about this film in development specifically by the end of the summer, like, there's no chance they're going to get it up in time, get a director, writer, full cast, filming schedule. There's no chance they're going to be able to get it up in time for the time between Doomsday and Secret Wars, even with that delay. So we need to start hearing about that soon if it's going to happen. I think it does make sense, and it would offer as an interesting movie to set either right before Doomsday or between the two, depending on like how Doomsday ends. I think it could be really interesting and it makes sense, but still, I just don't see it considering that we haven't heard anything about this film. Like all we have heard is slight rumors about like Marvel want like I think Daniel RPK has said Marvel wants this film to come out in the multiverse saga, and people kind of just like deducing based on that time runs out thing. And the way the Doctor Strange 2 ended, and I think there's rumors about Sam Raimi wanting to come back for the third film, which I would love, by the way, but I don't know how likely an option this is because we don't even know if it's an active deal. I mean, obviously they're going to make a third Doctor Strange film at some point because the last two films have been very financially successful and it's a great brand for them, but we have not heard anything of substance about this film and if it's actually happening. So I can't in good faith say this is one of the top options, but especially for 2028, like I think it's more likely that this film comes in the next 3 years or next or 2025, 2026, 2027 than in 2028. Like I think it makes more sense in the multiverse saga. And if it doesn't come in the multiverse saga, then scrap the whole time runs out idea because it doesn't make any sense past Secret Wars, even if they rework it a lot. So scrap that idea if it doesn't come in the next 3 years. And then I think it's going to be a lot longer for that to do it. It might have to be a completely new idea, new director, new path, with obviously still Cumberbatch in the main role. So, don't think this is one of the more likely options, but I guess we'll see. It does make sense in the next 3 years potentially. Another rumored sequel is Thor 5. Obviously, Thor 4 was very poorly received by fans and mostly by critics as well. But the thing is, it did well at the box office still. It made, I think, similar to Guardians 3's box office. I think it was like 700 to 800 million. And that proves that even with bad word of mouth, Thor is a very marketable brand for them and is one of the more popular characters, with Hemsworth obviously playing the role. And we know he is coming back for both Avengers films as well, or at least we know Doomsday. I don't know if we know Secret Wars as well. So maybe he could die. Who knows? But they kind of have a route out there too with the Valhalla thing. But anyway, I do think that Thor 4 or Thor 5 will happen. As much as I hate Love and Thunder, I think this character still deserves another chance to have another movie. I do think it'll happen. I don't know how likely it is for 2028, just because I think that they need to do kind of a creative reset with this character, which is weird to do in the fifth film of a franchise. But I think they kind of need to do something similar to Spider-Man, where they like have an ending for him in Secret Wars where it kind of, I'm not saying kill him off necessarily, but something like that where like the character is reset and can kind of have a new supporting cast and a new direction for the character in terms of like the way he acts. I do think as long as you can convince Hemsworth to play this character, he should be the lead in these films. I think he should be playing this character for as long as humanly possible. But who knows in that case? Maybe he'll want to kind of step away from the character. And we know he was not happy with where the character went in Thor 4, as most fans equally agree. Thor Love and Thunder is my least favorite MCU movie. But anyway, I yeah, I think that Thor 5 is definitely one of those possibilities for 2028 just because it is a very popular franchise. You get the right director attached to it and the right script. They know they can work with Hemsworth. It's not like a whole new character. And I think it is something that could get off the ground very quickly. But I don't know. I think the world still needs like a little bit of time between when Love and Thunder came out and when the next film comes out. But still, there's some rumors about like Gareth Edwards potentially directing the next film, who's the director of Rebirth coming up, Jurassic World Rebirth coming up. There's some rumors about Sam Hargrave, who did the Attraction movies, like who's worked with Hemsworth before on those movies. The Russos, I think, have said they want to work on a Thor film, so like you never know about that. So I think this is going to be about finding the right person. If they find the right script, the right script hits their inbox and the right director wants to come on and Hemsworth's still down to do it, this is one that could get off the ground very quickly. And there's also a chance that it could come out in the next 3 years. There is a huge aspect of Thor in the multiverse in the Secret Wars comic event, and I don't want to spoil that in case they do it, but that's always a possibility. But like I said, the reason this is likely option for the 2028 for these 4 dates is because it is a very easy project, in my opinion, to get off the ground, especially with him being in the next two Avengers movies. So we'll see. I don't think I'm going to choose this one as one of my forward predictions, but it is a possibility, and we'll see about that. We'll kind of see what happens in the next 3 years. But the next one is kind of similar in a similar boat, not in terms of the money situation, though, is Captain America 5. Um, it's tough because Captain America Brave New World was received very poorly by critics and was kind of 50-50 by fans and didn't necessarily flop the box office, but I think it like basically broke even. So wasn't a huge financial success like the previous three, or at least Winter Soldier and Civil War were at the box office. So it's going to be harder, I think, to sell to someone that Anthony Mackie's Captain America can sell at the box office. Now, he'll get a chance to prove himself again in the next two Avengers movies, but still, it's going to be a harder sell than Chris Evans. Just to be honest, and I don't feel this way. I was a I don't know what that noise was. I was a fan of Captain America: Brave New World. Not like I didn't think it was groundbreaking, but I was a fan of it, and I do love Anthony Mackie in that role. But not everyone feels that way, especially the general audience. So maybe they get the right director on this. I know the Russo brothers have wanted to do another Captain America movie, so maybe that's a possibility. I know that there's been a lot of, Captain America's a huge character. So again, it could be a Thor situation where they get the right script and they get it off the ground. And I think with the right word of mouth and with the right directors and writers on the project, which I don't know if the people who did Brave New World were the right people for that project. And with it being more of like a Captain America focused story and not with all these whole characters on the side, I think that it will be more marketable and could make more money. So that would be my kind of pitch if I was pitching with a Captain America 5. But I think it's unlikely because of how poor the previous film did, but I did put it on there even though it hasn't been rumored yet. It is one of their tentpole franchises, even without Chris Evans, so I think it's always a possibility. The next one on here is similar to Captain America. A Thunderbolt sequel, again, has not been talked about as being in development and is another film that did even worse than Captain America at the box office. I think it's going to be about $100 million loss for them. But the reason that this could work is the fact that Thunderbolts slash New Avengers was so good critically and was so good as a film itself and was good with critics and fans alike. Most people agree it was one of the best MCU movies, period, but also post Endgame. So it would be a case where they have to make them more marketable, and that would probably come with maybe a potential like big name villain. It could come with the right creative names behind it, maybe adding more marketable members to the team. I know that they will be more popular now. If they released a sequel like tomorrow, more people would see it than people that saw the first one, obviously. And I think it would have more legs. But with that positive word of mouth again, assuming, but it is just somewhat unlikely just because of how poor the movie did at the box office. And I'm not saying that was acceptable. I think it's crazy this movie wasn't a huge success. And whoever didn't see this movie, I'm mad at you because this movie was amazing and I wish everyone saw it because it was so good. But I do think this is one of the more unlikely options because of that fact is that I don't know if these characters are financially viable enough. And hey, we'll see in a month if Fantastic Four is the same way. Like maybe Fantastic Four has poor word of mouth, doesn't do well, and that sequel kind of falls off the ground. I'm sure they were discussing ideas for a Thunderbolt sequel if the chance if in the event that it did do well at the box office, but it didn't. So I don't think this one's likely. I think it's more likely these characters are folded into another project, one that's more marketable, and obviously we're seeing them in the Avengers movies, but it's always a possibility with Marvel. You never know, and obviously Florence Pugh is a marketable name, but I don't know if the rest of the team is. And the last one on here, another similar case, and this one's like very unlikely, is Captain Marvel 3. I do think the third Captain Marvel film was rumored at some point, probably around the time when the Marvels came out, but it's so sad because the Marvels was really good. And I think if you haven't seen the Marvels, I'm looking at the camera now. If you have not seen the Marvels, go see it because I promise you it is such a fun time and it's a really good movie. And do not listen to what people are saying to you because what people are saying about this film, the chances are that they didn't even see it in the first place. So don't trust what people said about it. And I'm so sad that it flopped so hard at the box office. And a lot of that case was the fact that it did come out during a writer's strike. And I think it was the writers and the actors strike. Yeah, I think it was the actors strike too. This movie came out during a strike, so the actors weren't able to promote the films. I think that contributed to a lot of its poor box office, but and also the fact that just like there is a lot of misogyny in our society right now, and people don't want to go out and support a full woman-led movie, which again is sad in itself, but it is just the reality. So unfortunately, I think Captain Marvel will kind of fold more into like the more big cosmic crossovers in the next saga with if they do an Annihilation thing, if they do something with Nova, like stuff like that. We know that a Nova project's been in development for a show or maybe a movie. So I think that's kind of where she's gonna fold in. Monica, who knows, maybe with Shield, maybe with the X-Men, maybe killed off. I don't know. I really don't know. And then obviously, Miss Marvel is going to be either with the mutants or the champions. So I think it's more likely that these characters, specifically Captain Marvel herself, kind of move on to other projects, and there isn't another film in this franchise, which is sad because I do like the Captain Marvel. I do like the Marvels. I don't like the first Captain Marvel film as much, but I love the character. I love Brie in that role, and I think that the Marvels is incredibly underappreciated, and I think it will continue to be. And I'm glad they're making the post-credit scene important to Doomsday because it'll make people watch this movie and realize, oh wait, this movie was actually good. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day, and I've discussed that before. So yeah, those are all the sequels that, at least in my mind, are likely and could come into play. Like I didn't mention like Guardians of the Galaxy because I just don't think that's happening without James Gunn. The characters might come back, but with Gunn off to DC and all that, I don't see them getting another movie in their franchise, at least for a while. So in terms of 2028, don't see it happening that soon. That's another thing with Captain Marvel. Like we might just need a break from Captain Marvel movies and Thunderbolts movies and Thor movies. So those might just be put on the back burner until later on in the 2030s, next decade, which again doesn't even sound like a real year. But yeah, those are all the sequels that I discern that could be possible. The next two, I just put these in terms of new projects and not follow-ups on sequels. And one of these is much more likely than the other, but I listed the other one for a reason I'll get into. But the first one is X-Men. And obviously we know for a fact that the X-Men reboot film is in development. It's been in development for a while. It's had a writer for a year. It's the writer from the newest Hunger Games movie, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and a couple other things. And just recently, Jake Schreier, who directed Thunderbolts, is attached to direct the film, which just like brilliant choice, like perfect choice to work with the Uncanny X-Men. I think that's amazing. But again, the topic for another day. But I think this is definitely one of the most likely options for these 2028 dates because it has a writer, it has a director, and there's rumors that the next saga will be the Mutant Saga. Now that that Marvel finally has these characters in their wheelhouse and kind of finally has them under their roof and they have the rights to these characters now. That makes it so that this is one of the more likely options, I think. And I think Variety even mentioned this one as well in the article. I should have said that earlier. So I think X-Men, and you'll see this is going to be one of my choices, but X-Men is definitely one of the more likely things because I think it has to be one of the first films to kick off this new saga because we suspect it to be a mutant saga. It could be literally called the Mutant Saga because now they finally have access to these characters and can kind of fold them into the universe and not have to pick and choose actors from the previous iterations like we're seeing in Doomsday and Secret Wars, and like we saw in Multiverse of Madness and the Marvels and stuff like that. So I do think that the fact that this has creatives already attached to it, we've been hearing casting rumors off and on from Jeff Snyder, who's like a 50-50 source, but still, I do think this will be one of the it wouldn't make any sense for it to be this saga because like it's kind of a jumping off point and they already have these X-Men characters appearing in the next two Avengers films. But in terms of films that could come out in 2028, I think this is one of the very likely options because it has a writer and director. It is one of the films that makes sense to kick off this next saga of the MCU. And yeah, I don't have much to say about it besides from that. Excuse me. I just think that it makes sense in terms of all these options as one of the most likely options. And the other one that I put in here is Midnight Suns, which, for those of you who don't know, this is kind of like a supernatural crossover thing, and this has been strictly rumored. This has been strictly rumored by scoopers, like reliable sources on Twitter and Instagram. This has not been something that has been rumored by like Deadline or Variety, so take it with a grain of salt, obviously. But it does seem that Marvel is going to be focusing a lot more on the supernatural in the next saga of the MCU. Obviously, they introduced the Werewolf by Night special presentation and those characters. Moon Knight, Blade, whenever that gets off the ground. We've heard about rumors about Ghost Rider being in the next couple films in Doomsday potentially. Who else? Doctor Strange, obviously, is a big character as well, which could lead this team and kind of make it more marketable. So we have heard a lot of rumors about a Midnight Suns film, and it would make sense considering the characters they've been kind of putting in building blocks for in this saga. So I don't know if this is likely for one of the 2028 films. It could be actually one of the 2020, it could be a 2027 or 2026 film, actually, probably 2027 more likely just because of how late in the process we are for a film next year. But I do think that this film will happen at some point, but I don't know if it will be this soon. I don't know if it will be a 2028 date. Maybe they fold it in with Doctor Strange 3 and it's Doctor Strange 3 Midnight Suns, and that kind of makes the best of both worlds. It makes a great Doctor Strange movie that people will go and see, and also a lot of supporting characters like Moon Knight, Blade, and Ghost Rider that people want to see. I do think the team will consist of those characters that I just mentioned, because they're obviously doing something with the Werewolf by Night characters at some point because they didn't release that thing for nothing, and they kind of set up a little bit of a tease at the end with Elsa Bloodstone and the main character Werewolf by Night and Man Thing as well, who could appear as well. I don't think they did that for no reason. Also, the show was received very well, so I think that we'll definitely see those characters again, and this is kind of the natural project to see them in. Obviously, Moon Knight's future is kind of uncertain because, like, we've heard that season two probably won't be happening, and we don't know if he's going to appear in the next two Avengers movies. So they're clearly saving it for something because it is a very popular character both in comics and the MCU with Oscar Isaac. So I think we'll see him again in the team. But anyway, in terms of 2028 films, I don't know how likely it is, but like 2029, 2030, assuming they do focus on the supernatural a lot more in this next saga, because I think from what I've seen, they're kind of going to focus on like four main pillars in this next saga, which is the cosmic stuff with like the Fantastic Four, Nova, Annihilation, maybe the Shi'ar as well. Mutant stuff, obviously with the X-Men, supernatural stuff with the Midnight Suns and all those characters, and then still with the street level stuff with like Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Champions maybe, Punisher, all those Spider-Man, all those characters. And some of those characters will obviously cross over into different sections, but that's kind of what I think the next saga will focus on. So I think assuming that we can't expect a Midnight Suns film to happen, will it be in 2028? Probably not, but there's always a chance because we have heard a lot of rumors about this, and a couple of scoopers have even said that like this film is being fast tracked, so you never know. But that's it for the kind of the new projects. My last category here is films that Marvel has officially had in development at one point, but have now put on hold. Obviously, the main one for that is Blade, which I mentioned earlier. Blade's become kind of a running joke in the fan base and kind of just the movie community in general because it was announced back in 2019 and they just have not been able to get off the ground, even though it seems like a very simple project and very low budget. Without getting too much into that whole drama about this film, I'm so excited for this film to be made, and I really hope it is still being made. And the fact that Variety mentioned it in the article specifically means that I think it definitely will still be made, and it is still enlisted on the Marvel Studios page. And Mahershala Ali is the main character, and also Mia Goth as well, are both still attached to the project. So I think if the project was cooked, they would have gone by now. But I think the fact that they are still sticking to their guns here and they want it to be made, and there has still been rumors about it, and now Variety's talking about it, I do think it'll be made. And like there comes to a point where like it has to come out in the next couple of years. Like I can't see it getting to like 2030, 2031. This film still isn't made because then nobody will care anymore. Like people will, but at that point it's like Mahershala Ali and Mia Goth are like big actors right now, and they're going to be big actors in the next decade or two. So like you have to kind of get them on this project, or they're just going to be like, you know what? I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to do another superhero project. I'm going to go over to DC, or I'm going to go over to Star Wars. Actually, Mia Goth is already doing Star Wars. In the Ryan Gosling Star Wars film. But like that'll come to a point where it's like they just have to leave if it takes more than a decade to get this film off the ground. So I think this is also a chance that it could be like a film that comes out in 2027 and kind of like an anthology film on Battleworld. But I have to say that this has to be one of the more likely options to be in 2028 and be one of those films that kicks off this next saga, assuming they're focusing on the supernatural side of things. And I think Blade could be a really interesting way to kick off that supernatural side of things and set up a Midnight Sun project as well, kind of tease that in the future. There is always a chance that they fold one into the other, like they film Midnight Suns, or they fold Midnight Suns into a Blade project, or they fold Blade into a Midnight Suns project, and kind of only one of those is made. That is always a possibility, and we know Marvel's been trying to play it more safe recently with introducing new characters and kind of focusing more on profitable, like guaranteed profitable films, which is one of the reasons we probably won't get another Captain America or Thunderbolts. But I do think this film is going to happen. I think it will be sooner rather than later. I would be surprised if this film does not happen in the next 5 years. Under that logic, it has to be one of these 2028 dates, and I think it could be one of the earlier dates, 2028 even, and one of those things that could be filming in 2026 or 2027. And so yeah, the last film that fits in this category is also Armor Wars. This was a project that we originally heard about as a show, and then it was moved to a movie. Obviously, the one concept throughout has been the fact that Don Cheadle would be the star as War Machine, or James Rhodes. Uh, I think this project is cooked. There's been rumors that they folded some of the aspects of it in Division Quest and potentially Ironheart as well. And I don't even know if Don Cheadle will be in the next two Avengers movies. Like, it just seems like this film has never really gotten off the ground, or this project in general has never really gotten off the ground. So I do think if it is still happening, it is a likely option for one of those 2028 dates, but we just haven't heard anything about this. Like, at least with Blade, we've heard that it's gotten close to filming, but they just haven't found the right script. Like Armor Wars is just like we haven't heard anything about it. Like, it was announced again in like that 2020 Zoom call that Kevin Feige did, where he announced like all the shows and announced like Loki, WandaVision, Hawkeye. Like, it was announced alongside stuff that's been out for like 3 years now. So like I just don't know. This has never had a date. This project has never had a filming date. We never had a full cast, never a director, never a writer. Like, we have no idea what's going on with this show, besides, or this project, besides from the fact that reliable scoopers have said that parts of it have been folded into the Vision Quest show that is filming and coming out next year. So like I like maybe that meant Ultron was going to return. I don't know. We don't know anything about this project. I cannot in my right mind say this will be one of the 2028 dates because we know nothing about it. So I do hope this project happens because I think Don Cheadle deserves to have a solo project. I think they did his character kind of dirty in Secret Invasion. That might be another reason. Maybe Secret Invasion, because of kind of how bad they did the character with the scroll reveal and all that. A spoiler alert, but you don't need to watch the show anyway if you haven't. It's terrible. But with what they did with this character in that show, maybe they're just kind of like, we don't know what to do with him now. And maybe Don Cheadle was like, I don't really want to play this character anymore. I don't know. I don't even know the last time he was asked about this. I think he said that he still wants to do it, but I just don't know. We don't even know if he's gonna be in Doomsday. That's kind of be the first test. Like, is he in these next two Avenger movies? If he's not, what is the explanation for that? Is the actor just done with the character or what? So this is one of those projects that I just don't know if it'll ever get off the ground, and it might just be kind of minimized into other projects. And who knows if Don Cheadle will ever play the character again. So that is my list of kind of all the realistic options for February, May, November, December in 2028. And I'm going to say what my four choices are here, and I'm going to rank them in order of how likely they are. My number one most likely is the X-Men film, simply because it already has the creatives attached to it. It doesn't make any sense for it to come out in 2026 or 2027. So the most likely option is that we'll kick off this next era of Marvel Studios with the potential mutant saga, I'm putting in quotes. So I think this is the number one likely option. That's one of my choices. I don't know if it would be the February date or maybe the November date. I don't know. Or maybe it would be like the tentpole event date, which is in December, which Marvel has for their Avengers movies for the next 2 years, obviously. I don't know. I'm not sure about that, but I do think it is most likely option. I think next the most likely option is either Black Panther 3 or Fantastic Four 2. I'm going to go with Black Panther 3 because we've heard about this being in development longer. I'm not choosing between the two of them, by the way. I'm choosing both of them, but I'm saying in terms of likeliness and considering maybe they removed two of these dates, I think Black Panther 3 is the second most likely because Coogler is very hot right now. We know he's been tossing around ideas of a script, and we know he set up a sequel with Black Panther 2. I think he signed a deal with Marvel and his production company. They signed a deal with Marvel a while ago, so I think there's probably like every 5 years he has to make a film, so maybe that's part of it as well. I don't think it makes much sense 2026 or 2028. And I think it'd be a great film to just kick off. Not, it doesn't really have a specific connection to any of those four kind of categories I mentioned, but it is just a very popular franchise and a very popular moneymaker, and a lot of people want to see this conclusion to this trilogy. So that would be my second most likely. The third would be the Fantastic Four sequel because I think that they want to make these characters very important. It was listed in the Variety, and it was listed in the Variety article, and now it's confirmed that it's happening. I do think this film, and again, my bias might be showing here, but I do think this film will do well both critically and commercially. Not like insanely well, but I do think it'll be received well enough where people will be in demand for a sequel. And I think with the way Secret Wars is going to end, and again, I have knowledge of the comic run and will not spoil it, but I think with the way I'm expecting it to end, I think there's an interesting story they can tell with how our characters are going to be left after that Avengers film. And I also think that there's a chance they want to set up this Annihilus storyline and the Annihilation Wave. And if you don't know about this, just ignore what I'm saying. But if you know about comics, you know what I'm talking about. I think they might be setting it up for like one of the big events, one of the first big events of the next saga. So with that in mind, it would make sense to introduce him as a villain in a Fantastic Four sequel. So sounds like they want to get these characters as much exposure as possible because the Fantastic Four are like it's hard to realize it because Marvel Studios hasn't had the rights to them and the previous iterations were so bad, but the Fantastic Four like are one of Marvel's biggest IPs in the comics and it hasn't really got there yet in the movies, but I think that's what they're trying to do in these next 3 years. And maybe this first Fantastic Four movie will kind of even out at like 700, 800 million at the box office, which will still be a huge success, by the way. But a sequel, similar in the way that Guardians of the Galaxy was, where the brand wasn't very recognizable, but the first film was so well received by fans that the second film made a lot more money, and I think the third film was around the same thing. This will be a similar situation here, I think, where people will be very in demand for a sequel, and more people will go out to see the brand of the Fantastic Four after they prove themselves in these next three films. Those three films being First Steps, Doomsday, and Secret Wars. So yeah, that's my third most likely option, and that's my third pick. My last pick is Blade, and maybe it's just a feeling here, and maybe I'm just delusional, maybe I'm just wanting this film to happen, but I do think Blade is a very likely option. I think they have to get this film off the ground. I just think at this point, if this film wasn't happening, Mahershala and Mia Goth would, especially Mia Goth, like she's not even the main character. I think they would have left the project by now, and I just think that in the next 3 years, they have to find a director and a writer that wants to do this project and wants to get it off the ground and has a similar vision to what Mahershala has for this project. And I think that it's such an interesting project to introduce and again to set up the supernatural side of this next saga of the MCU because I don't think it's going to be happening in this saga because a lot of those characters, I don't know if we'll see them in the next two Avengers movies. So my fourth choice is Blade, and I think it's more likely than any of these other non-sequel projects that I mentioned. And I guess Blade and Midnight Suns go hand in hand. Like I said, if Blade does not happen and kind of just the character appears the first time in Midnight Suns, but I think would be silly. But if that is the case, I think that that would be the other option. I think that would be kind of my fifth option or kind of fourth slash fifth option if Blade is not happening. But yeah, that's my four choices for these dates. I'm not going to try to pair them because like it's just almost impossible to tell which one will be which. But I do think that X-Men will either be the first date or the last date. Because either it's going to be the first one to be the first film to kick off the next saga, and it's literally like a couple months after Secret Wars comes out, or like I think it's like 5 or 6 months after Secret Wars comes out. Um, or it'll be that event film, that event date in December. So, but that is my choice. I think X-Men, Black Panther 3, Fantastic Four 2, and Blade are my main choices, mainly because those were literally the four films that Variety mentioned were the most likely to be those 2028 dates. And obviously, they're kind of just using deductive reasoning there, but there's obviously sources that play there as well because it is an official outlet. So, yeah, those are my four choices for the films of 2028. Feel free to go in the comment section and say if there's anything I missed, but I think I covered everything, or whatever your predictions for the four dates are. And yeah, I'm excited to see, and maybe my predictions will change after the next couple films come out. And we know Marvel isn't attending San Diego Comic Con this year, so we probably won't hear anything then. But it sounds like they'll have a big Comic Con in 2026. And I think D23 is next year as well, because I think it skips every other year. So next year will be a big thing. I think at least by midway of next year, we will know what this slate is going to be in 2028, or if they're going to remove one of these dates. Again, my guess would be that they do remove one of these dates, and one of those films I just said is it's only three of those films that I just said, but I'm hoping they keep four because that'd be a great year. Imagine we had those four films in 2028, Black Panther 3, Fantastic Four 2, Blade, and X-Men in the same year. Like that would be amazing. And it's a lot of brands, like excluding Black Panther, it's three brands that we have not had a lot of recently. So that'd be really cool and kind of stepping off in this next saga of the MCU. So that'd be great. But anyway, I could be wrong, could have forgot some stuff. Let me know in the comments. And yeah, we're getting closer and closer for steps. Doomsday filming is still rolling along. By the way, like as I'm recording this, I keep checking my news because there has been, you know what? I'll just leave that. There's been like this rumor that's been kind of heating up for the past week about Spider-Man 4 and about a potential actor that could be reprising a role as his character in this movie as one of the co-leads. And maybe it won't come true with how this movie has been, with the rumor mill. Like half the stuff we hear, or like 90% of the stuff we hear is never true. So I'm gonna leave it for now. I'm not even gonna say it, but there's a chance in the next couple of days or even today that I have to film an emergency episode about a brand new day news tidbit. But chances are that you will hear from me next with my reviews for those movies I was mentioning, whether it's Elio 28 years later, or maybe even How to Train Your Dragon. That will be coming at the latest mid next week, at least in Elio's case, probably by the end of the weekend. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. You'll be hearing a lot more from me on Marvel and just in general really soon, heating up to the movie of the summer, Fantastic Four First Steps. And yeah, I will see you guys on the next time. Thanks for watching.